little roller up along first. Behind the bag. It gets for Butler. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
Welcome to episode 4 of Bullpen Sessions. I am Jason, and I am welcoming Rob Moroska to the Bullpen Sessions Lounge as we are going to talk about, I'm going to guess, one of his favorite subjects, the 1986 New York Mets, the World Series champions. And Rob is a lifelong Mets fan. He co-hosts a great show, NY MLB Talk, where he is the resident Mets fan, along with Chris, the resident Yankees fan.
Yeah.
They bring you, but not only New York baseball talk, Rob, you guys talk all of baseball.
Yeah, all of MLB. You know, we don't just want to stick to the Mets and Yankees. We want to cover everything. So we do, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you guys, you're on X, but you're also on YouTube, and you got a presence on Facebook as well, right? You're pretty much everywhere on socials, correct?
And TikTok, yes.
TikTok,
big on TikTok, too.
And, of course, you are part of a really great show on Wednesday nights, Rob, called Clearing the Bases that we're both a part of. Wednesday nights live on X at 9 p.m. Eastern. Catch us talking all things baseball with Rob, Chris, Nick from Rounding Third, and Lorenzo from Big League Takes. So today on this show, we are going to focus on those 86 Mets, and Rob was fortunate enough to have been at 2 of those games, games 2 and, of course, classic game 6. That's got to be a pretty incredible memory, Rob, and we're going to get to game 6, of course, and probably spend the most time there. But I want to ask you, really leading into that season, I know there's a lot of young talent on that Mets team, Rob. What was the feeling? I mean, was this a team that you thought was a World Series contender? Like, do you remember how you felt about this team kind of leading up to the 1986 season?
Yeah, definitely. Well, after 85, what happened in 85, the Mets and Cardinals battled it out, and the Cardinals won. Yeah. I just saw it. It started in 85. When the Mets got Carter from the Expos, that was that missing piece that this team needed to get over the top. They had Hernandez. He started it all. A mixture of veterans and kids, Strawberry, Gooden, Dykstra. I mean, you knew that they were going to do great things. And 1986 was a great year. But, Jason, it was also a wild year. That was a wild New York Mets team.
Yeah, I was very young. I was 9 years old. But this was the first World Series that I really remember watching and kind of understanding the game. I remember watching the previous year's World Series, but it was mostly just, vague memories there. I really remember watching this one. And I was pulling for the Mets because as a Braves fan, back then league loyalty was bigger than rivalries. You pulled for the National League because your team was in the National League. So
that's right.
I vividly remember pulling. I didn't even know who the Red Sox were at that point because back then you didn't see teams from the other league very often. I mean, I was a Braves fan. We saw only National League teams. There was no interleague play. So I was heavily pulling for your Mets, and I was a big Doc Gooden fan back then. I'm an even bigger Doc Gooden fan now, understanding just how good he was, Rob. Do you remember watching him and just thinking, I mean, this guy was special. He was special.
Yeah, he was. We used to somehow the Mets always had it set up where Gooden was pitching Friday nights at Shea Stadium. Nice. So we would go to Shea Stadium on Friday nights, and that place was rocking. It was packed. It was just the electricity in the air every time Doc pitched. It was unbelievable. It was something that I've never. And the Mets always had great pitching. That's the one thing you could say about the Mets. Always had great pitching. But Doc, when he would pitch, it was an event when he pitched, especially on the weekends. It was so awesome. And that team was just such a fun team. And, there wasn't social media back then. So whatever you heard about the team, you read in the papers, in the trade. So you didn't know a lot of what was going on. You got some of it, but you didn't get all of it. And, when you found out just how wild this team was, it was like, Unbelievable.
Are you surprised sometimes with some of those stories that the team showed up for every game, healthy and
Yeah.
ready to go? Yeah.
It's just amazing that they did and that they won. They won 108 games that year. They were 108 and 54. And it was no one was getting in their way in the regular season.
Right.
The postseason got tough, which we're going to get to, but that regular season was just a breeze. And they started off. Mookie Wilson got hurt in spring training. He got hit in the face, and his glasses broke. And Carter got injured during the season, and Ed Hearn had a catch for a while. So it was just everything just worked out, even when players were hurt and things happened.
Yeah, so let's briefly talk about that National League Championship Series, 6-game win over the Houston Astros. Some really good games in that series. You talked about how tough it was. And of course, back then, only one round of playoffs required to get to the World Series. So what are your memories of that series and that battle with the Astros? I know there's some classic moments from that series as well.
It was a battle, that series, and that's why I feel the Mets started off a little slow in the World Series. They had to recover from that. Was a brutal series with the Astros, and it was mainly because of ex-Met Mike Scott. The
tough.
Mets could not win, and it was getting down to if they didn't win Game 6 of the National League Championship Series, they were going to have to face Mike Scott. So as you saw in that Game 6, it went back and forth, back and forth. That was like a war in baseball. And luckily the Mets won, because if they had to face Mike Scott, we don't know, what would have happened, especially with the things he was doing with the baseball, he went from an okay average pitcher with the Mets to, Mike Scott. And he won the MVP of the National League Championship Series, and his team didn't even win.
Isn't that crazy? That's
crazy.
Insane. You probably won't see that again, just the way the media is now, but that is kind of crazy. All right, so they do get to the World Series. And before we kind of start in on the series, you mentioned earlier Gary Carter, who for me is a young fan, is kind of the lasting memory of that team. And I remember getting older and starting to understand baseball more and seeing baseball cards with Gary in a Expos uniform. And it was so weird to me because I knew him as a Met and he was part of the Mets. And it was so odd to me. But talk about Gary Carter's importance, Rob. Just he seems like he was kind of the heart and soul of that team, maybe the clubhouse guy that pulled it all together. Can you talk a little bit about, how important Gary Carter was to that team?
Very important. He was so positive. That's what the thing was. Not only, of course, listen, he was a catcher and he had to work with that pitching staff. So he was a great guy to mentor the young pitchers. That's for sure. But let's put it this way. When me and my brother heard it was a Sunday, we heard in December that the Mets traded for Carter, we were jumping up and down. That's how happy we were, because we knew that was one of the pieces. And from the minute he put on a Met uniform, I was at his first game, because I was at every Met opening day from 1981 till 2008. Wow. So Carter, his first game as a Met, at Shea Stadium, opening day, his first game at Shea Stadium, hits the game-winning home run. So right there, you knew he was going to make a big impact. So he was so important to that team. And as we know in Game 6, he's the one who started that rally.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good way to start your career. As I'm looking at his stats, I think the most surprising thing I see is he had 2 triples that year. But 24 homers, 105 RBI. And yeah, he's kind of that lasting memory. Of course, Ray Knight kind of sticks out because of that game as well. But, Darryl Strawberry, Lenny Dykstra, Ray Knight, Rafael Santana, Wally Backman, Keith Hernandez. I haven't even talked about Keith Hernandez and his importance to that team. So that's a lot of talent, Rob. I mean, I think sometimes people look at that series against Boston, and as you mentioned, as we'll get into it, they dropped the first 2 games, right? So I think Bruce Hurst pitched really well in Game 1. And
he did.
It was 1-0. And then Game 2, Clemens wasn't his best, but they got the job done. And so all of a sudden you're down 2-0. And that was at home, correct? The first 2 games were in New York.
Yeah. Game 1, Tim Tuffle made an an error in the seventh inning, and that was it. The only unearned run. Ron Darling pitched a great game, but so did Bruce Hurst. Like I said, I'm not making excuses, but I think they were just hung over from the Houston series and the celebrating. So that's a double hangover.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough. Yeah, for sure.
And then game two, which I was at, that was Clemens against Gooden, and Gooden just did not have it. Both of them exited early, exited the game early, what I remember. But the Red Sox had 18 hits, and they had 5 consecutive singles in the 8th. And, they just took the first 2 games, and the Mets are already down 2-0. And, that's when you start to worry. Such a great year. This team always found a way to win, and now they're down 2-0 in the World Series. Not looking good.
Yeah, and imagine as we get into the rest of the series, the dichotomy between how Mets fans were probably feeling and Red Sox fans who were trying to break that curse. And it would be another, 18 years or so before they finally break it after this. But, just Red Sox fans, I would imagine, even being up 2-0, were probably still a little hesitant just because of their history, in the postseason and their lack of titles since the early 1900s. Whereas Mets fans, like you said, you're probably feeling a little pressure because great season, 108 wins, and now all of a sudden the ultimate goal might elude you. You're going to Boston for the next 3 games. I remember being a Braves fan in '96, still haunts me. We won the first 2 in the Bronx against the Yankees. Yeah. You feel pretty good when you win those first 2 games on the road and you're headed home for 3. But as with my Braves that year, the series was far from over. So game 3, Mets break out the bats. I know Gary Carter had a big game. I think he had 3 RBI. Dykstra goes deep. Bobby Ojeda has a really good game. One of my favorite all-time nicknames took the loss in this game. Oil Can Boyd took the loss for the Red Sox. So the Mets are right back in it, Rob. 13 hits, 7 runs in game 3, and they're on the board, and you probably are starting to feel a little better.
Yeah, definitely starting to feel a little better. Love that game. Ojeda returns to Fenway, and he pitches a great game. Oil Can didn't pitch so well. Right. Oil Can, though, what a character. I just remember seeing him on the bench talking to himself, yelling, just going crazy. He was crazy. But Dykstra, he hit a leadoff home run. Danny Heap also he had a 2-run single.
There's a name from the past, yeah.
Yeah, and Carter had 3 RBIs in that game. So, the Mets are getting right back into it. Now it's only 2-1.
Yeah, so we move into game 4, and you probably felt like, you may not remember exactly, but you probably felt like you really needed to get this thing tied up, right? Not fall behind 3-1. And Carter delivered again. I believe he had another 3 RBI game here, 3 hits, 3 RBI. And this time it was Ron Darling getting the job done. And so another kind of comfortable win, 6-2, and now you're tied up going to game 5, one last game in Boston. Do you remember kind of how you were feeling at this point, Rob, or has it been a little too long?
No, I remember. I even remember where I watched that game. I was at my friend Pete's house. We were going crazy, and we were cocky Met fans then. Right. So of course, once they won that, we're like, okay, that's it. It's over now. Here we go. But it was just that whole series was just exciting. So it was great that it was tied 2-2.
Yeah, look, this is one of the World Series people talk about when you talk about the greatest World Series, back and forth, and the road team winning those first 4 games. So you go into game 5, and typically in any 7-game series, baseball, basketball, hockey, game 5 in a tied series, I don't have the stats, but typically the game 5 winner is at a huge advantage to win the series, obviously, even though they're usually going back on the road. So the Red Sox come out and they get back in the win column. Looks like you guys tried to come back late. They had a lead. You guys score a couple runs, one in the 8th, one in the 9th. But the Red Sox take control heading back to New York. This was another Bruce Hurst. Bruce Hurst, by the way, might be one of the overlooked guys for those Red Sox teams. He pitched 2 really good games in this series. He scattered 10 hits over a complete game here, Rob, to shut you guys down. But and Doc, again, not his best outing here in game 5.
Then you're starting to think to yourself, what is going on with Doc?
Yeah.
He pitched 2 awful games in the World Series. Something's going on, but we're going back to Shea. We're going back to New York, so everything's going to be good.
Yeah, you still got to be feeling pretty good. And again, this team had found a way to win all year. So let's get to it. Let's get to the big game here, the one that everybody really remembers and talks about. You were at this game, so definitely want to dive into your memories of being at Shea Stadium for this. And, the Red Sox get on the board again, like first, 1 run in the first, 1 in the second. So before you even sit down, you're down 2-0 in a decisive game of the World Series. So you're in the stands, Rob. Your memories of early on in this game, team falls behind early on. Were you nervous? Was it unbearable nerves like you get in the postseason, or were you feeling confident still? Kind of walk us through that.
Well, I was in the upper decks, first of all. Let's get that straight, okay? And from the minute that game started, it was crazy. Shea Stadium was rocking. It was swaying. Shea Stadium used to rock and sway. You were afraid that building was going to collapse. I felt it at Met games, and I felt it when I saw the Who and the Rolling Stones at Shea Stadium. Yeah. That place just swayed. But what happened in the first inning, we had a visitor drop in. There was a parachuter who just dropped in with a "Let's Go Mets" sign right over Wally Backman. It looked like Wally Backman was going to jump out of his skin. And I remember watching the game over many times, and Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola said that, it looked like Backman was going to have a heart attack. He didn't see the guy coming. So that started off what was probably one of the wildest games. It has to be the wildest game. And I was at that Braves Mets playoff game when it went into extra innings, and it was raining, and then the grand slam single. So, but this one, it was just back and forth. And was I nervous? I was nervous when the Mets did not score in the 9th inning, and they should have scored. They had a chance to win that game in the 9th, and they blew it. So, I was feeling nervous going into the 10th inning.
Yeah, so fall behind early, but I wanted to let's see if I can get this to come up here. It's not cooperating. It's going to throw the starting lineup up there, but it's not wanting to cooperate. But, I was looking at the starting lineup, Rob, and you just look at these names again, and you probably had to feel pretty good. So you guys get 2 runs in the bottom of the 5th. So like you said, this was really back and forth, 2-2 at that point. Red Sox get back on top, 3-2 in the 7th. Then you guys respond in the 8th. As you mentioned, a chance to do it in the 9th. And then they get 2 in the top of the 10th. And I'm one of those fans that I'm very pessimistic. When the Braves get behind, I'm like, all right, it's over. This is done. That probably would have been me in this game if I was a Mets fan. You know what? We made a good run at this thing, but they've got us. How were you feeling heading into the bottom of the 10th inning there? Down 2 runs. This is it. The Red Sox probably thought they were about to be World Series champions in the drought. You guys, how were you feeling?
Well, I'm not one of these people who say, "Oh, I knew they were going to win." No, I was not feeling good. My friend said, "I can't watch this." I said, "Well, we're not going anywhere." So he actually left his seat and went, by the concession stands. And there's the lineup.
There it is. I got it this time.
And a great lineup. So, I was not feeling too good, especially when Backman makes the first out. Then Hernandez gets up. Hernandez makes an out. The Mets, that's it. There's 2 outs. All right. In fact, there's some famous stories where Hernandez went into the clubhouse, got a beer, and was drinking a beer, watching the rest of the game on a TV in Davy Johnson's office. But then Gary Carter comes up, and what he said, and we heard about this and read about it, was there's no way he was going to make the last out of a World Series.
Yeah.
No way. So he gets a hit. He starts it off. He gets a base hit. Then Kevin Mitchell is called on to pinch hit. But where is Kevin Mitchell? He's in the clubhouse on the phone making flight plans to go home. So he has to, and he doesn't have his full uniform on. So they got to rush him. Come on, you're up. He throws on his shirt. I forgot what he wasn't wearing something. I don't know what he wasn't wearing, but he gets up, he gets a signal. So right then, you're thinking the magic, there's some magic going on here.
I'd never heard that, by the way, about Kevin Mitchell. I'd never heard that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's
amazing. That's amazing. It makes it even more amazing that he got hit. Yeah,
I know, it's a great. He ran out. He was getting dressed as he's running from the clubhouse to the dugout. Then Ray Knight gets up and he singles, and now it's 5-4, and now Shea Stadium is going nuts. Bob Stanley was pitching. Then they call in Calvin Schiraldi, who was an ex-Met. He pitched for the Mets. Mookie Wilson gets up with that iconic at bat. Just he's fouling off pitches. It's just what an at bat. And then of course the wild pitch.
Yeah.
And the Mets score. It's a tie game, and right there, I know I've watched the game a ton of times, of course. I've seen the game over and over. And you see Clemens' face in the dugout, and you just see the Red Sox, and they're thinking doom is coming. It's
coming, yeah.
And the Mets, another funny thing that happened was the Mets, they got the Red Sox clubhouse all ready for celebration. So they put up, the coverings over the lockers. They wheeled in the carts of champagne while, this was going on, the first 2 outs. And then when the Mets start scoring and tie it up, they have to hurry up and get everything out of the Red Sox clubhouse. Meanwhile, on the scoreboard, it's congratulating Bruce Hurst as MVP of the World Series. Right? Another premature thing that I don't think would happen anymore, because that's just crazy. So then Mookie's up, and we know what happens. He hits that grounder to Buckner. And listen, Buckner, I love that it happened, but you got to feel sorry for the guy.
It's rough. Yeah.
It was so rough for him. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Why was he on the field? Why wasn't there a defensive replacement? He was old. He was hurting. Because McNamara wanted him to be there and celebrate when they won. That's the only reason. Yeah. That's it. But the ball goes through Buckner. Mookie would have been safe anyway. I'm sure of that. I mean, Mookie was so fast. And everybody knows Vince Scully's famous, right? And
like you said, Mookie with what we would call a professional at bat, right? Like a hitter's at bat. It was just an amazing, battling. And, we'll get to Buckner in a minute too, but it's funny to me because Red Sox fans, they've never talked about Calvin Schiraldi kind of having a meltdown there. And they always blame Buckner, but there was more than one person to blame there. And again, professional at bats from Carter, from Mitchell, as he put his shirt on, apparently, from Ray Knight, and then Mookie. Like, it was just one after another, just the kind of at bats that, frankly, you don't see as much anymore or enough of anymore. I can't imagine. There might have been a moment there when that winning run scored, Rob. Did you think Shea was going to collapse, maybe under the weight of the excitement?
That place, Shea was falling apart. Let's face it. It was a dump, but it was our dump. And I love Shea, and I miss Shea Stadium. Even though Citi Field is beautiful, I miss Shea Stadium. But Wilson, what a professional at bat. And you have to remember, other things are going on too. People are throwing toilet paper from the upper deck. So when Mookie's up at bat, you see the toilet paper, full rolls of toilet paper falling behind them. It was just, it was out of control. And then, Vince Scully says 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. And then he was silent for about 2 minutes. He let it, which was an amazing. That just showed how great an announcer and broadcaster he was. He just let the picture, speak for itself. And
the greats always know when to let that happen, right? And they just know how to make those calls, and that he made it even more classic with that. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah. So we're going nuts. That's it. The Mets are going to win the World Series, and I think you could tell how deflated the Red Sox were. That there at that point, I said to my friend, "There's no way the Mets are going to lose the World Series. It does not matter." So we were very confident after Game 6 because that just burst Boston's bubble.
Yeah. I remember watching, one of those documentaries on this series, and I don't remember who it was. It was one member of the Red Sox team, and they said there was no time during Game 7, even when they took the lead early, that he thought they were actually going to win that series. They were that deflated by Game 6. So that tells you a lot when a professional baseball player says something like that, because they're used to having to flush a bad performance and go on to the next day. That happens every day during the regular season. This is different, obviously. You're on the verge of winning it all. Like you said, the champagne's on ice, the plastic is up. They're congratulating the MVP on the screen, and then you have it snatched away from you. That had to be pretty rough. But, to their credit, they come out in Game 7, and they do take an early lead. But before we move into Game 7, Rob, Buckner, some more thoughts around that and just kind of how baseball can be the cruelest sport, and Bill Buckner is probably the best example of that.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit older than you, so I remember seeing Buckner playing in his prime. Okay, yeah. I remember for the Dodgers and the Cubs how great a fielder he was. A great fielder and hitter. It was, after the series, after the excitement. I'm a young guy anyway, but I'm thinking to myself, this, Buckner, really, he's the GOAT, where his family is getting death threats from Boston fans. Okay. Yeah. It's out of control. He needed police protection. It got the man sick. He was, they put it all on him. He didn't deserve that. Like you said, Schiraldi, Bob Stanley, another one. Those guys blew the game too. McNamara for leaving him in. I understand why he left him in, but there's no way Buckner should have been playing first base that night. But, the Mets already tied it. And I think at that point, the Mets were going to win no matter what. If it went into another inning or whatever, the Mets were winning that game. But the way Buckner was treated up until just before his death, when they finally embraced him, they invited him back to Fenway. But and that, I think you might be talking about the special that was on HBO, which was excellent, about the curse and Game 6. But you know what? The fans, they thought that the curse was finally over,
right.
And it looked like it was one strike away, and it wasn't. But Buckner should never have been treated the way he was treated.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. And people that don't know about the rest of his career, they really need to research Bill Buckner so they know the full story. He had 2,700 hits. That's not shabby. That's 2,700 hits in Major League Baseball. He had a batting title. There was more to Bill Buckner than that. And I'm glad there was this kind of reconciliation, the Red Sox and him, before he passed away, because kind of like Steve Bartman, just completely treated unfairly. But hey, for the Mets fans, Game 6, classic. I always think about this, though, Rob, that for every great memory I have as a Braves fan, a big win, the 92 slide for Sid, against the Pirates, as I was a 14-year-old kid celebrating that, there was a 14-year-old Pirates fan brokenhearted somewhere. And that's baseball. There's always the two sides, right? But that's what makes it really great, is that drama, that romanticism that we have for the game. And Game 6 is probably of 86 is probably one of the best examples of that. And all of this.
It's one of the best World Series games of all time. It definitely is. And I mean, it just had everything. And it was on the big stage. Let's face it, New York, Shea Stadium, packed, over 56,000 people at Shea Stadium. It was just crazy. And one thing people tend to forget, Game 7 was supposed to be on Sunday, the next night. It got rained out. So Game 7 wasn't until Monday. So the Red Sox had to endure a whole day because Game 7 got rained out.
I'd forgotten about that. I knew that and I forgot about it. At very least, for their sake, at least there was no social media back then, or they would have had to avoid their phones all day and not see that replay 30,000 times. So we get to Game 7. So where were you at for Game 7, Rob? Do you remember where you were watching? I'm sure.
Yeah, I was actually at my house and I had friends over. So, we had about, I guess, 8 of us or so.
Okay. So you're gathered around your big screen, flat screen TV, right?
Yeah, of 1986.
Yeah. Boy, kids today, they just don't know. They just don't know how good they have it. So Game 7, and the Red Sox, again, to their credit, they got 3 runs in the second inning, I believe. So they take an early lead once again. And the Mets actually scored all their runs in the 6th, 7th, and 8th innings of this game as they come back and get the W. But, 3-0 going into the 6th. But you're still feeling pretty confident at that point?
Yep. At that point, I was not worried. I knew they were going to come back because they didn't only come back in the World Series. They came back all season. They came back in the National League Championship Series. So at that point, I was not worried. The champagne was on ice and it was going to pop open. I knew it.
Right. So as you get down to those last few outs, I mean, I remember everything about the last few outs of the Braves 2 World Series wins that I've seen. Walk us through that. I know you remember it. Walk us through those last couple outs as you're counting it down. Now, I don't remember exactly. How old were you at this point, Rob?
Let's see. That was 86. So I was 23.
Okay. So you were born in
63.
63. So you were very young in 69. So do you remember anything about 69?
I remember that it was on TV. I remember my father had it on and my uncle. And I remember after the Mets won, everybody was beeping their horns outside. Yeah. So I do, I remember that. I don't remember if I remember a lot of the plays from just seeing replays or, watching it. But I do remember when they won it. I remember that the horns outside were going, people were going crazy.
So but really this is the one would be the first time you got to really celebrate and know what was going on.
Yeah, and once Orozco came in, I knew he was going to save the game. I wasn't worried. We were just sitting there waiting for it. And then that last strike, and he throws the glove up in the air, which that was going to be my background tonight because I have a huge picture, not even a poster, signed by the 86 team. And I can't take it out where it is because I don't want, it's protected, but I tried to make it my screensaver and yesterday it worked, but before we came on, it didn't, but I have that. And my late brother actually had the plate from the New York Daily News of that picture because his friend worked for the Daily News. And I tried stealing it from my brother so many times, but, and we just celebrated when that last out was made. Finally, we got to see the Mets win a World Series that we remembered. So it was great. And unfortunately for us, and there it is.
There it is.
And he's going to be there tomorrow too, by the way. So I can't wait to see him tomorrow.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was just great, Jason. And maybe somebody made a deal with the devil or something because that was it. After that, I've had heartache after heartache. 2006 National League Championship Series. I'm sitting there when when the Mets lose it, when Beltran doesn't swing, which that pitch, a lot of people wouldn't be able to swing at that pitch. It was just
fair enough. Yeah.
And and me and Chris talk about this. I was at Shea Stadium when the Yankees won the World Series against the Mets, and another one. I had my stepson was a little kid at the time. I had to actually carry him out of the stadium because he was screaming at the Yankees.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was crazy. And real quick, real funny, Chris on our show, Chris is a Yankee fan. I'm the Met fan. Chris does not want to go through a Subway World Series ever again. And I said, Chris, why? You guys won. He said, I can't take it. I can't take that pressure.
I'll have to ask him on our next show or when I'm talking to him, like, is it worse if they lost a World Series to the Mets, or is it worse when they lose an ALCS to the Red Sox? Like, which is worse for a Yankees fan? That's got to be tough, right?
That is tough because the Yankees are supposed to win against the Mets. They're the older brother and all that BS. Right. But that's a good question. You have to ask him out.
I'll have to throw that out there. So, you make a good point though, and there's been a lot of these teams throughout. I mean, the Braves of the '90s are an example. That Mets team, did you feel like you were going to win multiple titles with that team? I mean, they were really good, Rob. You had to feel like that wasn't going to be the last time.
Yeah, unfortunately, Jason, we know what happened. We know about the drugs, and we know, it just the team was wild. We didn't know at the time how bad it was, but 87, Doc has to go to rehab, right? Already. So 87 season wasn't too well. 88 though, the 88 team, they had David Cohn. Okay, they had McReynolds, so that was okay too. They had a great team in 88, and I was at the game when Gooden gave up the home run against the Dodgers, and they lost it, and then that was the end. That was the end of that. And you know what? Then Frank Cashman made some stupid moves and deals, and they traded, they wanted to trade some of these guys away. And getting rid of Kevin Mitchell and Ray Knight after the 86 season, those were two big mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay, so they already started to break up the team. So I thought it should have been a dynasty with those players, with Gooden and Strawberry, Carter, Hernandez right there. That team should have been a dynasty, but it wasn't. Just the one World Series. And you know how that feels with the Braves, which is
absolutely. Yeah. And I think people underestimate the importance of chemistry when you remove guys like a Ray Knight and a Kevin Mitchell. I think the Mets maybe did it again with Alonso leaving. Somebody in the clubhouse that really holds things together. The Braves, Dansby Swanson, Freddie Freeman leave, and they haven't won a postseason series since.
Right.
So,
you're right.
You underestimate those kind of things. You talk about talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but you got to have that chemistry, and the 86 Mets are probably one of the best examples of the chemistry and the talent. They had both. So after that, you talked about some of those memories you have. What is the biggest what if for you? Is it 88? Is it 2006? What is the biggest what if? I know you guys got to the series. You lost the Yankees. No shame in that. That was a pretty good dynasty they had going. You lose to the Royals in 2015, right? So maybe it's that one. Like, what is your biggest what if moment after 86?
Well, two of them. I have to say two of them. 88, like I said, when Gooden gave up that home run, and Hershiser, though, you have to say that guy had a great postseason. And then it's funny. Then he was a Met in '99 when the Mets went into the postseason against the Braves. But I would say that, and then 2006, that team was great. That team should have. When I already had they already sent me the World Series tickets. I already had them, and I was at every postseason game. And after Andy Chavez made that catch, you thought, the Mets are going to win this game. And Beltran, you can't rate a Hall of Famer like Beltran on one at bat.
No.
Okay? It happens. He's another one. He got a bad, he got a bad name because of that one at bat. But those two have to be, the biggest, Jason.
Yeah. And you have to feel like you would have won that. And probably in both those cases, watching what the Dodgers did to the A's in 88. And then, the Cardinals were one of those teams, almost like a team of destiny. They weren't a favorite going into that thing.
No.
They were just kind of magically charmed that postseason, but you have to feel like you probably would have beaten the Tigers as well. And won that World Series. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel that they would have definitely won that World Series. But that's baseball. That's the beauty of baseball. The game we love. It's anything could happen. Anybody could win at any moment, and that's the beauty. And something else that's good that we've learned. Met fans and Brave fans and Yankee fans and Red Sox fans can get along, and we could do some really awesome shows together.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that though does come with age. I'm not sure 20-year-old Jason could have talked to a Mets fan the same way. But but going back to those early days, like I said, I was pulling for the Mets because of the whole league loyalty thing, and that's really changed now. Obviously, it's not as important as it used to be, and you got I don't remember talking about rivalries as much back then. Of course, late 80s, the Braves stunk, so we weren't really anybody's rival. We were just losing everybody, but I just don't remember that much about rivalries until later. Now it's the Phillies, it's the Mets, the Dodgers sometimes, depending on how they're doing, but that's kind of a new thing to me as far as people talking about that. I think the Mets Braves late 90s was really the first time I felt a real kind of rivalry going for the Braves.
See, we had them, and it wasn't the Braves. It was the Mets, Cubs, Mets, Cardinals. So it was teams that weren't even in their division. We used to have Cub Buster shirts in I think it was 84. And then the Cardinals, what happened with the Mets and Cardinals in 85, and then 86, the Mets just destroyed them. But we didn't have, until the 90s, the Mets Braves weren't really a thing.
Right.
But that's what started and heated up more because of John Rocker and because of Chipper Jones,
John Rocker. I don't remember that guy. Who's that guy? Some people we don't claim, and he's definitely on that list for sure.
So that's when it started with the Mets and the Braves in the 90s. Before that, it wasn't, because if you remember the Mets in '69, they beat the Braves when they weren't supposed to in the National League in the playoffs. So there's a little history with the Mets and the Braves.
People forget that Mets Braves were the first. That was the first NLCS, right? That was the first year of the divisional play. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and the Mets pull off a stunner and beat the Orioles and win the World Series. So pretty good stuff. Well, Rob, I mean, this is great. This has been fantastic. I know I know you pretty much. I'm assuming you always like walking down memory lane for 1986.
Love it, of course.
Yeah, of course. Right.
What else do I have?
Look, it's going to happen again, man. It's going to happen. It's got to happen. It's got to come back around. If the Red Sox snap their drought, and hopefully it won't take that long, the White Sox snap the Cubs, it's going to happen for the Mets. It's going to happen. Even the Dodgers.
Definitely.
Even the Dodgers. People forget after 88, they didn't win another one until, if you count the Mickey Mouse title in 2020.
Yeah,
if not, it was 2024. So even the mighty Dodgers went a very long time without a World Series title. So it happens. I think the Mets will get a lot of young talent on that Mets team. It looks like.
Yeah. At least we're getting, they were bad this year, but at least we're seeing the kids, and the kids look pretty good. So, if there's a baseball season next year, which we've talked about many times, hopefully everything will work out. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Rob, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and thank you, Jason.
We'll have you back, and we'll probably do something besides the Mets next time. We'll think of something outside the Mets. Good. All right, man.
Okay.
Thank you a lot. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.